This is the Nerd Best Friends podcast. It's too late to turn back now. You jump, I jump, remember? And yeah, they both could have totally fit on that board.
Hello, nerds. Welcome back. Happy New Year. And thank you for listening to the Nerd Best Friends podcast. I'm Analese, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey, it's me, your best friend, your podcast host, and your sweet New Year's baby, Rob.
Are you a 10-pound, 4-ounce?
Not quite that big. 8 pound, 2 ounces, smooth, shiny new baby for 2022.
I like to think of him as wearing a tuxedo shirt, like he's ready to party. All right. So we've hit episode 10, Rob. We got to double digits. And today we are talking about a modern twist on New Year's resolutions.
This is something that we've been doing for a few years now. It is project management as far as New Year's projects instead of resolutions.
Okay, so before we get to our episode today, Rob, how about our craft beer of the episode?
This time I have chosen Kona Brewery and their Island Seltzers. Different than a beer, but with the same sort of philosophy or the same sort of thing that I like about craft beer. What I like about these Kona Seltzers is right on the can, it says only 3 ingredients in big, bold letters, right? It's got seltzer, it's got alcohol from cane sugar, and it's got whatever squirt of, flavor juice that they put in there. So much different than your overly fruity, sweet things that you're going to be finding on the main beer aisle there that you're seeing commercials on TV. This is a very clean and healthy ? Option.
So is this the brand that one of our mutual friends recommended?
It is. I was recommended this by a friend, and I found it right where they said it would be and gave it a try, and they're super good. And Kona Brewing is killing it. I picked up a few of their variety packs of their craft beer as well, and every single one of them is a banger. Really, really crushing it. Kona Brewery out of Hawaii.
Very nice. So the question I have about that is, as someone who's only tried a few seltzers, they're either really sugary. So for someone who's diabetic, I've got to be very careful on how I choose when I choose to imbibe. They're either really sugary or just really, I know there are sours, really sour, really fruity, really something. So now what you're saying, it's basically alcohol, seltzer water, and like LaCroix level hint of lime flavoring.
LaCroix is the best comparison to it. It's kind of hint of whatever that flavor is. 100 calories, 0 grams of sugar, and 2 grams of carbs.
When you say alcohol, we're not talking, it's not a specific, it's not like it's a tequila drink or a vodka drink. It's just alcohol.
Cane sugar alcohol.
That's pretty amazing. So Kona Seltzers, maybe I'll try one.
And maybe we'll talk about this in a future episode. I know that we're going to be doing some craft beer stuff, but thinking ahead to that, we'll be talking about the difference between like pale ales and India pale ales and stouts and porters. And maybe we'll add in the difference between a seltzer and a truly.
Or like the very popular White Claw. Where does White Claw fit into this formula of a seltzer? Very good. Thank you for that, Rob.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
So listener mail, I want to say thank you to our listeners who are getting active and involving us, tagging us in social media. One thing that came about over winter break was a really great tag from Instagram user SC Vocal, who shared this program she drew for her family's Christmas. Back in the 80s, she drew like a program that says like number 1, Christmas singing of this, number 2, opening of presents, number 3, carving the turkey, like created a program.
Like a playbill.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Style. Okay.
It was really, really cool. I love people sharing us their nerdy things that they're finding. And what I would really love is after we go through this episode about this twist on New Year's resolutions, to hear if people join in and just keep sharing that content with us, because we love seeing the nerdy things that our listeners are doing.
I love stuff like that. That's a really good pick. That's great timing for today's episode, right? Because we're going to be talking about, that is a fun and creative way to organize a list, right? That could have just been a list on a scratch piece of paper or the back of an envelope, but this nerd went the extra mile to make it something creative and fun. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is these fun projects and how to organize them.
Lists are definitely fun. And I know we all have a little bit of that, like, let's make a list to check off as we get things done. And that's a little bit of what we are doing.
What the listener does is it injects a little bit of fun. It injects a little bit of whimsy. Gamification is a big motivator for people when they're trying to get things done as we look ahead to these New Year's resolutions. So New Year's resolutions is our theme, sort of, for today. You want to talk to us about New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, I'm going to say first, I absolutely have never liked New Year's resolutions. Now, I think it's two things about that. So for me, first of all, and I don't know how you feel about this, but we were in school for a very long time as children into teens. We went to college. We were in school for a long time. I immediately became a teacher at 21 years old and have been in education since that year. New Year's, January 1st, always feels like a mid-year for me. It never feels like the reset that everyone else around me tends to explain what New Year's feels. It's a new year. We're turning the calendar. No, it's mid-year. This is our time to recharge and go back into the second half of the school year. I think I get that feeling more when we're going into the weeks prior to the start of a new school year. We make our goals and our plans and what our classroom's going to look like, what our thing like, and you get that excitement that I think I watch other people have on New Year's Eve. I've never really had. On the flip side of that, I always feel like if there's something you need to work on as a person, you don't wait till a date on a calendar. Now, sometimes I struggle with weight on and off my entire life. It's never for me a New Year's resolution. It's I have to care enough about my health and I have to be serious enough to stick to whatever I need to do. And this most recent where I've lost like 100 pounds off of the heaviest I've ever been, it's not a diet. And it wasn't this arbitrary date. I'm going to start it now. It's like I was diagnosed as diabetic. I was told things are not going well internally in my body. And that was a wake up call for me to continue on a path of eating better, making better choices, changing my portions, doing all the things needed to do. I've never latched on to New Year's resolution. What about you?
I feel the same way mostly with the education schedule, because in our world day to day, when people talk about next year, they're not talking about January. They're talking about August or September, right? And that's just the nomenclature there. So that is definitely something that we share in common. It's like, no, the new school year is the new year. But I still do, when I look towards a refreshing period, when I look towards things, really when I look towards the end of the year, it's this holiday time. My family has a lot of time off. In addition to me, we celebrate Thanksgivings on different sides of the family. We celebrate Christmas on different sides of the family. My wife's birthday is during this time at the very, very beginning of January. There's all of this kind of family time. And so that feels like the end of the year. You know, that feels like a special time. And then once all of that fun and family and time off is over, it does kind of feel like a new year. So I get both. There's the new work year and there's the new family year kind of thing.
That makes sense.
But I also, as well, this is not going to be a podcast about your New Year's resolutions. It's going to be a podcast about how I also hate New Year's resolutions. When I was a young adult, I thought like, oh, New Year's resolutions, that's something that people do. This year, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to take 50 runs. I'm going to, whatever. And that's the one thing that I'm going to do this year. And inevitably, I always fail. Right. No matter what it was, it failed. And so then I would be like, I would take internalizing that failure. I would then project out and much like you, New Year's resolutions are total baloney. What some arbitrary day on the calendar is going to tell me I got to be a better person? Forget about that. Right. New Year's resolutions are the worst. And so for a long time, people would be like, oh, do you have a New Year's resolution? And I was like, to be even more awesome, I guess. Like just stupid clown stuff because I didn't like them. Like they never worked.
Let's be real. We're both smartasses. You might have said that even if you were holding to New Year's resolutions. A for awesome. Whenever I have to do those stupid icebreakers, right? Yeah. So I get it. And so that got me thinking as we prepared for this episode, what is the deal with New Year's resolutions? Where do they come from? Realistically, I was thinking about things like that a lot over break. Like my partner got me a massage for Christmas. So I went and got a massage and I was thinking, instead of relaxing the whole time, I'm like, what are knots? Is it an actual knot in your body? Like, how does a knot form? And so I got home, and instead of relaxing after massage, I'm like on Google and checking out like how knots work. So a little bit of the same of that here for New Year's resolutions. So it's actually, there's a really long history of the idea of New Year's resolutions. And some of the things I read reminded me of like D&D games that I've played, and also some of the D&D podcasts you had me listen to. A lot of what I found out is that even like ancient Babylon would have these like 12-day festivals that pay tribute to the gods and promise that they will pay their debts. And that's not necessarily thinking monetary debts, but their debts to people, their debts to their fields, their debts to their crops, return objects that they borrowed from other people. And they would do this 12-day festival. And it was considered like a rejuvenation of a new year, to ask and receive and make peace and stuff like that. That kind of shifted when we get to like Rome and Julius Caesar, when the modern calendar started to get formed. January, or Janus, the idea from the people during ancient Rome times was that Janus would look back on the months prior and reflect on the things that happened and look into the future. And so that got kind of turned into...
Is that why in the business world, everybody in accounting is always named Janice? Oh, Janice from accounting isn't going to like this.
I mean, that would make a lot of sense. What you just said, the joke you just made, Janice, like a Janice. I may be pronouncing wrong. Janus, Janice, Janus, whatever it may be.
January. Yeah.
Absolutely could be why they're all in finance or running offices, right? They're the ones who can see both what was happening before and
they know everything
into the future.
But
the Romans actually would make sacrifices and make promises for good conduct. They would be good people for the new year. And then, of course, with the rise of Christianity, it became a religious, let's do a service on this New Year's Eve into the first day of January. And then as time progressed in Western civilization, became more secular than sacred. And that really has driven this long, long history of the idea of paying tribute to things that happened, reflecting and doing things, prosperity for the next year coming. Out of that, I've met a lot of people who have different ideas and thoughts. Like, I don't do anything on New Year's Day. That is my day to rest and rejuvenate and reflect. And I've met people that whatever I do on January 1st will set up my habits for the rest of the year. So I will do laundry on January 1st because I want to stay on top of my laundry. And then, of course, people who try the New Year's resolutions, whether they succeed or fail year after year.
What is interesting about that is the aspect of sacrifice from the history tradition, because that's where I see the New Year's resolution and why I don't like it. Because so many people, it's some sort of sacrifice. I'm going to stop eating French fries for a year. I'm going to stop drinking alcohol for a year. I'm going to stop eating out for a year. I'm going to lose weight by cutting out bread for a year. Right. These kinds of things. Like, that sacrifice idea is still there. Being the heathen that I am, that just, I don't like it.
The other theme that's there is that reflection, right? As humans, we reflect all the time. I like to reflect constantly and try to be the best person I can be. But for some people, this end of the year is that like the time between Christmas and New Year's is that reflection time for them, family time to look back and look forward. So the fact that that's still there after these thousands of years is pretty phenomenal.
With that in mind, we're going to buck that tradition. We are, instead of making these resolutions about sacrifice, we're going to make them about fun and nerdery.
Absolutely. Very nerdery. So tell me about the origins of this thing that you have done that I've attached onto the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I haven't mentioned the project tool that I use yet, specifically because I don't want anybody to turn off the podcast. So here it comes. What I have found to use for my New Year's resolutions, project management for this kind of thing, is Trello. Don't turn off your podcast or roll your eyes, because I know Trello, that's for work, and that sucks. I work in an office, or I work in IT, and we use Trello for these projects. I hate Trello. When I get that little alert that somebody added me to a card, I groan and stomp my foot. No. What we're going to do with Trello is just like, because it is a professional tool, it is very robust. Even the free version lets you create a tons of different workspaces and boards and different projects that you can manage, that you can share. You can collaborate with people on there. You can attach pictures and these kinds of things. So I have, for many, many years looked for like, what is the right, good conversation? What's the best to-do list? And it's just like any question like that. What's the best to-do list? What's the best way to lose weight? What's the best way to get from here to there? The answer is almost always the one that works for you, right? There is no catch-all. So using the Trello boards for these New Year's project management is something that has worked for me. I have so far never failed. I believe the first one we did was in 2019, called it 19 for 19. I put 19 projects on the Trello board that I wanted to do, not necessarily self-betterment, not any kind of sacrifice, but things I wanted to do. That board game's been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I'm going to play that this year. Oh, you know what? My son is into this video game. I would like to play it with him and put some hours in there for something like that. I'm going to put playing a video game on there. I do put a couple chores on there every once in a while, but it's because it's things that I want and need to do for my nerd hobbies. So for instance, one of my 22 for 22 is to go through the game room and try to get rid of 22 things, right? Because I'm always trying to make space. So, maybe get rid of some games that I'm not going to play anymore, get rid of some 3D printed stuff that I'm not using anymore, or I can make a better one now based on what I've learned and those kinds of things. So there are some kind of chores on there, but it's always things that I want to do, right? It's about fun and it's about focusing my efforts so that when we come to the end of 2022, I'm not looking back and thinking like, oh man, maybe I should have done more of this, or maybe I should have done more of this. But instead, I have this beautiful layout of look at all of the fun nerd stuff that I did for myself and my friends this year.
Well, as you mentioned before, there is a hint of that reflection and, shifting your attention from this idea of a resolution to the idea of goals. When you say you're going to get rid of 22 things, that is doing something that is reflecting on clutter, reflecting on there are things that other people might be able to use. There are still some of that personal gain. Maybe gain's the wrong word. Maybe you can help me with the word I'm thinking of.
Gain is fine. I'm all about the gain. It's the sacrifice I'm against.
Yeah. But getting rid of 22 things is a sacrifice. It's just not for the sake of sacrifice. It is for the sake of betterment. And that's still a piece that ties in the idea of these ancient resolutions, is that you're still saying, hey, I've been given plenty. My sacrifice is to do this, but also I gain because now I have more room in my game room and I can buy more games, or I can XYZ. There's still a tie to that history is what I mean.
So I was listening to a podcast at the time. It's called The Happier Podcast. It's Gretchen Rubin's podcast, and it's all about like being happy and finding the things that make you happy in your life and whatever. So for whatever reason, back in 2018, this was a podcast I needed and wanted to listen to. But around that same time, I was looking for solutions in my classroom for project management and organization and things like that. At that time, we didn't have a good like learning management system that would do a lot of these things. So the idea of being able to open a business project management software, but in the classroom, and putting big PDFs of student work on there, the student could then take their work on their card. They could do their work digitally. They could attach documents and photos to their card and move their card into different categories or different days of the week, I think is how we did it, and check things off and submit them as done. It was pretty cool. It was really fun it was fun for me. I don't know about the kids, just thought it was a bunch of work, but it was very organized, and it was neat to teach them these skills and stuff. Again, I'm always looking for like real world skills and professional tools and stuff to bring into the classrooms so that, those kinds of things. But so these two things met around the same time. My discovery of Trello and how to use it for project management, and hearing this idea from the podcast about New Year's resolution. What if you chose things that you wanted to do instead of things that you felt you had to do, or that other people want you to do, or that society tells you should do? What is it you want to do? And a lot of the idea of that podcast is like, it's the little things that make you happy, right? You don't have to spend a ton of money. You don't have to go on like these huge trips to find happiness. It's like, what are the little things that you can do every day or every week that bring you joy? And so the idea was like, it's going to be 2019. pick 19 things that you do that make you happy, make a list of it and stuff. And I'm thinking like, oh man, if I came up with 19 different projects, games on play, just things that I want to do, things that make me happy, cool. So I would start that on on like a little checklist or to-do list. And then I realized, well, some of these things I need like subtasks and I want to keep track of it in a fun way. And there was Trello. So that's kind of the origin of how this set up, as far as like, oh, I could get back into New Year's resolutions if it's more like about fun and about things that I want to do. And here's this program that I think will work really well for this.
What I remember is that 19 for 19 was really successful for you and your wife. In context, I moved back that summer, mid-year of 2019, but prior to the new year of this 1920 school year, you were both all over the 19 for 19 and showed me, and it was really intriguing to me. I'm super old school. Like I wanted to write it out on a paper and just like hang it to a wall and do that. I've never used Trello for anything else, but I downloaded it and checked it out. And to be very clear, I want to kind of highlight what Rob said, that if this is something you're interested in, or this type of goals-based or management-based New Year's resolution twist, whatever works for you is best, because there are industries out there where Trello is your thing. And for us, it's like Slack. I would not open Slack to do a project like this, because everything in our business right now, the district we work for, is Slack. So totally understand.
I was in a D&D group, and the guy who was running the game was like, oh, we should keep track of stuff and communicate on, let's make a Slack, and I'll make a Slack channel for you guys, and we can talk D&D on Slack. And I was like, I'm never going to open that. I'll never turn on the alerts, and I'll never look at it.
So totally understand that someone who is listening right now who uses Trello 100% for work is not going to be jazzed about going into Trello for a Trello board New Year's resolution twist. So whatever works. But Rob, why don't you tell us about how the Trello board works for those who are new? And if I may say, we're not sponsored by Trello. I only have the free version of it, and it works wonderfully for me. But I jumped in 20 for 20, and I really enjoyed that format. And I'm going to say I have never succeeded in finishing all of them. And the 20 and 21. Now, I blame 2020 on the pandemic, because I had things on there.
That was a tough year to start.
Yeah. And because I had things like, I tried to really max it out, and we'll talk about this as we talk about what we set for this year. But I said, okay, well, I'm going to do 20 things, but some of those things, I'm going to do 20 of them. So I'm going to watch 20 new shows. Well, that was easy during early months of the pandemic. I'm going to 20 hours study a foreign language. Easy to do, because I needed things to do in the early months of the pandemic. I'm going to volunteer 20 hours. I got some of that done, and then all of a sudden I couldn't volunteer. So there were 4 or 5 things I didn't get to finish that year. Same thing happened this year, where 21 of something on a list of 21 was too much. 21 books was too many for me. I'm going to flip that a little bit, but Trello is very helpful to help me remember and keep track of exactly what's going on.
So if it's not something that you've used before, we'll take it out of the screen and put it in like real world. Imagine like a cork bulletin board, right? Like a rectangular, horizontally oriented, big cork board, right? And on that cork board, you put like headings, right? If this was elementary teacher mode, I would take some construction paper and I would cut out a rectangle. And on that, I would say projects or ideas or to do or resolutions, whatever it is. I'm going to put that in the upper left-hand corner of that bulletin board and poke it in there with some pins. And then in the middle of that board, top middle, next to the first one, I'm going to take another strip of paper and I'm going to write in progress on it. And I'm going to stick that up there. So now I've got 2 headings, one on the upper left, one in the middle, and then the one in the upper right. I'm going to take my little piece of construction paper, my strip of construction paper, and I'm going to write finish, or I like mission accomplished, done, things like that, and put that up. So you're imagining this cork board and it's got these 3 headings on top. And what those then become is the headings or the titles for columns. And under each of those things, you take a note card, like imagine a 3x5 note card. And on that note card, you write your desire, your project, your thing that you want to do, right? Read the new Dragonlance book, watch all 23 Marvel movies, whatever, all those like nerd things that you want to do. You write them each on a 3x5 card, and then you would pin them under the ideas or the to-do column on that corkboard. And then as you start those projects, so you might go to that Marvel movie one, right? And you're going to grab that note card, and under it you go, okay, well, I'm going to watch them in this order. So I'm going to write down, and I'm going to put Captain America, Captain Marvel, and then Iron Man, and then Hulk, and then Thor. And you might make a list on that note card. And as you start it, you're going to take that note card and you can move it over to the in progress section and start checking off things for that project. And when you start something else, you take that and you move it over to the in progress. When you finish one of those projects, you're going to take that card and you're going to move it over to the mission accomplished section of your corkboard, right? And so the idea is you've got your 22 things in the left side column, and throughout the year, you're moving them along the line from ideas and desires to in progress to done. So that's the physical way, the representation of what Trello does. What Trello adds to that, being digital, it's the exact same thing, right? You set up a workspace, right? So my wife and I do these together. We like to collaborate on our things. So we have like a family workspace, and then we create a board, and we do the board 22 for 22 is created, and we both join it, and then we start adding cards to that first list. And sometimes we'll have conversations about cards that we want to put together. So you can assign people to cards, you can color code the cards. So on the list on ours, all of mine are green and they're assigned to me with a little picture. All of my wife's are pink and they're assigned to her with a little picture. And then there are some that we want to do together, right? Like, oh, we're going to go on 22 dates, or we're going to watch 22 movies together, whatever that might be. We can both collaborate on that card, and it's got both colors or a third color on there. So there's easy reference there looking at it on the screen. And then what else is nice, we talked about like in the example, like subtasks and things on each card. You can add pictures, you can add documents, you can add to-do lists of subtasks and things on there, which I find super helpful, especially for a lot of the 3D printing projects that I do. Like if I'm going to, I backed this Kickstarter of a bunch of cool fantasy village buildings. So then on that card in the subtext, I'm going to make like, I'm going to make a to-do list for building 1, building 2, building 3, building 4. And in those to-do lists, like, okay, I got to print these 3 pieces, then I got to paint these 3 pieces, and then that part will be done and stuff. And as I go, what I like to do is take pictures of my process, because it's right on my phone. So I take a picture with my phone and I stick that picture on the card. So the cards become kind of dynamic as far as like looking back, where am I? What do I still need to do? Oh, that was fun. As you start moving them along towards that right side column, the mission accomplished column, you've got this kind of scrapbook of the cool projects or the events or the things that you did that you really wanted to do that year and you got done. So that's Trello for this project, how that
basically
works.
In a nutshell, how it works for this project. And I appreciated the photo portion of it as well. Both years I've done so far was try 20 and 21 new recipes, and to look back on the things, like I took a picture of the final plate of food to be able to look back and go, oh yeah, I remember making that. Oh, that was awful. Oh, that was really good. I should make that again. That was a really fun component of using Trello instead of just having the pictures on my phone to scroll through and try to find.
And you can share those things. So food and recipes is such a good example. One of the things that my wife is doing this year is, one of the things on the 22 for 22 board is meal planning is something that she wants to do. So as she's doing that meal planning, she's creating cards in there of like a picture of it and the recipe or the things to shop for, and then taking that and moving it over to a new Trello board that she created specifically for meal planning, where there's recipes and ideas and days of the week across the top. And then you like move things over and you can make your shopping lists and all kinds of stuff like that.
So it's a board off of a board off a board. It's like Inception.
Yes. So in your workspace, you could have many boards. So yes.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Plan. Yeah.
So let's talk about 22 for 22. Well, what I like what you put on our notes here, failed tactics. So tell me more about what you mean by that.
So you had touched on it earlier. Some things and some ways to do it either work for you or not, right? So we're always reflecting and we're always coming up on things like that. Like I found, especially this year, putting 21 things arbitrarily on a card. One of my 21 cards would be do 21 3D printing projects. That's a lot. And so then or, read 21 books or
Right.
watch 21 new movies. And so I was getting in the habit of, that inception of, 21 things on each of my 21 cards. And what I found failed on that one, I would fail few. I just ran out of time and couldn't get them all done.
Right.
The other thing that I was finding was because there was a goal on there like that, it was kind of stressing me out, which is not the point of the board.
Right.
So I would be neglecting other cards because, I got to get these 21 things done on this card. And that wasn't the point, where it should have just been a little bit more free or what I'm going to, so how I'm going to correct that is as I'm making that list of, say, 21 movies I want to watch or 21 3D print projects I want to do or whatever, I'm writing those down. And whenever I get to the end of that list in my head that comes to the forefront of my mind right away, whatever number that is, that's that number.
Yeah.
And I'm making them separate cards. That was something that I tried this past year in 2021. I put more than 21 cards on there, right? Yeah. I put 30 cards on there. And then as the year went by and I was looking at my Trello and stuff, I had more of a choice of what's exciting to me right now, rather than, there's still 2 things sitting there on the starting line and I got to get to them. I'm not really excited about it, but I got to finish my goal. Instead, there were 6 or 7 things still sitting over there, and I could grab the one that most excited me to start in October as we were getting closer to the end of the year to make sure that I got 21 things towards the end.
For me, I made a switch. I've only done it 2 years. So for me, I made a switch between 20 and 21. Same thing, 21 new books, 21 new movies, 21 new this, 21, that became this just extrapolated, extensive list that isn't achievable. So going into 22, I took a step back and said, it's not realistic in my job to read 22 new books. It's just not. I don't read fast enough. I want to enjoy it. I want to be choosy about what I read. And for the last 5 years on Goodreads, my goal has been 12 books. 1 book a month is a good pace for me. That doesn't stress me out. So I made a shift in 22. Instead of saying 22 new books, it's complete Goodreads goal, right? So that allows me to do what I'm doing already, because my thought the other way around was, I'm already going to read 12 for Goodreads. That's just another 9 more. And the other 9 more, even comic books, it's too overwhelming. So I made that kind of switch as well. Also, I wanted to be more realistic. I put the first 2 years, 20 sessions of yoga or 21 sessions of yoga, which I totally did, but I would find myself doing 3 or 4 sessions in 1 week to try to complete the goal. And so I switched that for 22 to say consistent yoga practice. So what does that mean? If I can do yoga once a week, is that going to be my thing? Am I going to do it, once every 2 weeks? Things along those lines, where I'm not putting that 22, because as the years progress, that number is going to get bigger and less attainable.
Exactly.
So I really, what failed for me is that 21 new recipes was not possible. Right. I cook a lot. We cook a lot. I have to be very picky and careful about my diet. So there's not a lot of new that I get to try. And when I do get to try it, I'm choosing to kind of go out of my diabetic food plan and try something for the family and then go back to, being a little bit better. So 22 new recipes isn't going to be the thing. So what's it going to be? Maybe I'm going to find, like you said, what's a number that sticks right now? Maybe 5. And maybe I flip that to 5 diabetic friendly new recipes. Right. So something that's a shift of not thinking of that big number and not trying to max out everything on that list of 22, because 22 things is already a lot.
I have another example of that. For a long time, we had one on our list. So I don't know if this is a regional thing. I imagine this is the case everywhere. Kids go around and they sell these books, or their cards now, called access books.
Oh, yeah.
And it's full of, local businesses put in just a bunch of coupons and deals and stuff to draw you into their business. And I think it costs $40 or $50. And so for all those years, it was use the access card 19 times, use the access card 20 times, use the access card 21 times. Well, come 2020, we definitely failed that one because 1, we weren't going out to places, or places were closed. And 2, when places finally reopened, this local business finally got to reopen, I'm not going to go in there and be give me stuff for free. That didn't feel right. So we tried to support them in different ways. So this year we were looking at that. We're are we going to use this thing 22 times? And we're no, let's change change that goal and just make back double the money on the access card. So it costs us $50. We're going to try it. We're going to do whatever we do and see if we can save $100 from like buy one, get ones and those kinds of things. And that'll still be fun. We're still going out, and it's like, it's a motivation to go out and do those things and try new restaurants or new shops and stuff, but it's not destined to fail because we're not going to use it 22 times in 52 weeks.
And I actually copied that goal from you all when I started in 2020, and same thing. I didn't even buy an access card this year because I figure I am just going to go places once in a while when we can and not worry about using the access cards. Same thing. The local businesses here deserve to not have me coming in with, here's my 2-for-1. No, if we're going to go out, we're going to take care of our local businesses, whether they're chains or not. So that is not on my 22 list this year. I didn't even buy an access card. So yeah.
Nerd wise, another thing that I've had to change up, or a failure, something that's not working out for me the way I like, is for a couple years, I think 20 and 21, I was looking at my just ridiculous pile of shame, right? All of my gray plastic unpainted miniatures.
Right.
And as they were attached to board games, and I'm thinking like, okay, I got to start on these games. So I would open up a game. I'd look at like the first couple scenarios or, whatever is that's in that game. And on the Trello card, I would make a list of the miniatures needed for that first game. And then go over to the next box. And I was like, okay, what are the ones that I must paint so that we can get a game of this in? And so I put a little subtask on that card for that game. And so I had, a dozen of these games with like, okay, these are the must paint things so that we can get started playing these games, because games are supposed to be played. They're not supposed to sit on the shelf. So I was doing that and it was working out okay. Like, okay, I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to paint up these 12 models and then we're going to play. And we played one adventure and it was like, that was fun, but I'm still kind of learning the rules. I want to play again. Well, I got to paint 8 more models. All right, well, let's try the next one. And it would kind of be the same thing. Like, or I would get like really hot on that one and be like, oh, you know what? That one was really fun. And I only need to paint like 2 more models to paint the next one. So I'll do that this week and we'll play another game of that or whatever. And we went down that list. And so I was operating that way for a little while. And what it has come to now that I don't like is I've got a cabinet full of half painted games. And nothing is done. Nothing is finished.
Right.
So now, like for the 3rd year in a row, that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game is still on my list. For the 3rd year in a row, this other board game is still on my list. This year, we'll see how it goes, but I want to get stuff done. I've trained myself over this year. I found some great YouTube videos and tutorials and stuff to do like speed painting methods to get things done faster. And I am getting faster and faster and faster at miniature painting, with kind of changing the philosophy of a painted miniature is better than an unpainted miniature. Notice I did not put any adjective in front of painted. Doesn't have to be well painted. Doesn't have to be expertly painted. Just needs to get some color on it so I can get these games going. So I've kind of adopted that new attitude and some skill as far as getting stuff done quicker. I'm going to be changing that because I want to never have to see some of these of these games on my paint list. You want them in there for the 5th year in a row.
Yeah, exactly. Especially as you get new ones coming, because I know you're not going to stop on Kickstarter all of a sudden.
Over the winter break, I think I painted 25 or so.
Wow.
Minis. I think I was putting in like 20 hours a week of painting to get the Conan miniature game done, because I've had it for like 4 years, and Conan 2 Electric Boogaloo is arriving. Like I saw on Facebook, like somebody in Portland got their box today, and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to show up any minute. I didn't paint the first one.
If you don't paint that now in retro 80s neon paint, I'm going to be super disappointed.
Just total 80s, like neon Conan.
You're setting me up for this, man. You said Electric Boogaloo and my ears went whoop. Similar to that, I'm just going to step back from the loftiness of the number and really focus more on the intention behind why it's on my Trello board, right? And that's kind of how I set up my 22 for 22. One of the other ones I failed the last 2 years was, make 20 donations of $20, make 21 donations of $21. That's a lot harder than it sounds. It's not a lot of money, but to make 21 different donations, because for me, I want to be invested in what I'm donating to, right? So in some cases, I had friends that needed medical bills paid over 21, and I had some people who lost their jobs and struggled, and I'd send them $21, and that just seemed kind of weird. That might be a tank of gas for some people. That's not a lot. And so I shifted that one. Instead of 22 donations of $22, I just set a numerical amount. I want to donate this amount of money throughout the year. So that might mean a bigger number to one entity and a smaller number to another, but it's not going to pressure me to come up with 22 different people or places or things to donate to. It's a lot harder than it sounds. So
I would imagine so, especially research like nonprofits and stuff.
Yes.
You got to look into them to make sure that it's, that your money is going the way that you want it to go.
So things along those lines. And I also added in more nerdy goals. I took away some of the academia ones that I had on my list. As an example, I have a study that I'm doing on some of my father's history that we learned about after he passed away. And my goal for 21 is to write 2,100 words on this study. And I did. I actually completed that. But after I completed the 2,100 words, I kind of moved away from it. So instead of those more academic ones, that's got to be more of a hobby. That's got to be more of an interest. That's not a goal. Move away from those and made my Trello board this year more nerdy. Right. And especially with the podcast, to study more about podcasts and things along those lines, just to improve this craft that we've gotten into. And
oh my gosh, you guys, imagine this show, but actually good.
I can't, I'm not going to say it's going to get good, but
a painted miniature is better than an unpainted miniature.
Exactly.
A published podcast is better than an unpublished podcast.
Yes. So I'm looking forward. My 22 list is pretty, not only achievable, that's not the sole goal, but achievable in ways that I am actually doing things that I'm interested in to better myself, to better make this year.
Just surround yourself with positivity and good vibes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, mine this year, that's funny because you're saying like, oh, I put a lot more nerdy things and took away some of my more academic things. As I'm looking at my 2022, and we'll talk about this in a second as far as cheating goes, but as I put together my 22 for 22 list, I somehow left off any of those things about like dieting or regular exercise or any of those kind of self-improvement things. They're mysteriously missing from this year's list. It's all nerd stuff all the time, really focused in on what happens in my game room and what happens on my little workbench. And to be honest, a lot of that is prioritizing those things, not just because they're the fun things, but I want to get those things done because I like playing games with my family. And it's something that we enjoy doing together. It helps us spend time together, especially with my son who is getting older and a few years from now, maybe doesn't want to play board games with dad anymore because, girls or whatever, and is gonna, go be in college and go have a job. So the more of these projects I get done that lead to sitting around the table with friends and family and laughing and eating snacks and having a good time and stuff like that is really a priority for me for these next few years, because it really makes me happy and makes everybody happy.
And you put the idea of cheating out there. I mean, I definitely feel like I've cheated on all my lists so far because I put things on there that I know I'm going to do already. Example, one thing that's helped me a lot, including building the 22 list, is going monthly instead of worrying about that 22 number. So I have auto pay or auto save set up on my bank. So when I get my paycheck deposited, it's going to automatically dump X amount of percent of my paycheck into my savings. So I put on my Trello board, save X amount of dollars each month. It's going to happen anyways. December rolls around, get that paycheck. I move that over. It's completed now. It's kind of cheating because it's going to happen anyways. I put finish. It's called CASC. Is a class I had to take for 2 years to clear my administrative credential. I knew I was going to complete the class, but I put on my list, complete CASC year 1 in 2020, complete CASC year 2 in 2021. And both of those kind of cheating, but also it's there to be known that it's something that I needed to do and complete and move it over on the Trello board. So
the point of that, I think, being on the Trello board and watching it move and watching the months kind of tick away on the subtasks or whatever, and being able to move it is a lot of the point of a to-do list or a project. Is there's a gratification, there's a good feeling that comes with finishing something like that. Yeah. So it is still a responsible thing to do. It's something that you want to do for yourself in your future. So putting it on there just helps remind you, and it helps prioritize it in your mind, which is good. That's what's making us happier, right? Reminding ourselves of the good things that we're doing.
Just going to tag on a little bit what you said about not having any like physical goals on your 22 board. I'm going to say that as I've gotten older and realized I don't need to have the yoga thing on there. I'm going to do yoga. I like the way it makes my body feel. I don't need to have jog 21 times on there. I'm going to exercise. And I think as we get older, the less we say that out loud, the more likely we are to actually do it. And that's something, that's a conversation I just had with our foreign exchange student, Frida, because she's taking a psychology class at her school. And that's one of the things they said, like the people who go out and boast, like, I'm going to make $1,000 this year. I'm going to lose 100 pounds. I'm going to do this, are the least likely ones statistically to complete it. Right. And that's that whole idea of failed New Year's resolutions. When you make this big, robust, I'm going to do this in 2021 and 2022, you actually don't. And then you have the ramifications of that. So I'm not going to say I'm going to lose 22 pounds this year. That is a priority in a different way, that it doesn't have to be on the Trello board to make my life better or to make me focus on something that's better for myself.
I think that's great. And I think in my case, it's that I have just given up.
Oh, come on.
As I get older, I realize, this is just going to be how it is.
Hey, I see your workout. I get your workout pings on my watch.
Oh, yeah.
Buddy.
Fitness Click, baby. Apple Watch Fitness Click. Gamify it. All right. So, the other thing, as far as like a cheat goes, cheat in quotes, because again, this is for fun. It's for you, is I'll add things as the year goes. I don't feel like I have to set these things in January or at the end of December, and then it's locked in forever, especially with the new way I'm doing it now, as far as like, I'm putting way more than 21 cards on here because I want to be able to grab things out of order. This past year, I added things all the way up into November. I was adding cards. For instance, we did this great, my son ran a D&D game for us. We did this holiday themed game, and, he was designing it, and he's like, I want an ice cavern with a big white dragon at the end. And it's going to have like an abominable snowman and all this stuff. And do we have ice tiles, so we can build the 3D dungeon and everything? And I'm like, man, that sounds really fun. And I had seen some examples of a really cool paint scheme that some people did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could totally knock that out and I could do it. But I had to start that project, and it was, there's 150 tiles or something in that dungeon. I was like, well, that's going to take a lot of my nerd time. I'm going to go ahead and add that as a card on 21 for 21, because that's what I'm going to be doing for the next month, is 3D printing dungeon tiles and painting these snow tiles up so that I could get them ready for that game back when winter break started.
Well, okay, but tangent, those of you listeners that follow us on Instagram, that's one of our posts, is the picture from that game that we played in person at early part of winter break. Those tiles, that dungeon turned out phenomenal. So adding that to your list for 21 was genius, because you spent the time on it. It looked really good. That was a really fun game where we thought we were going in, and the abominable snowman or whatever was
like a Yeti or
it's supposed to be a Yeti or whatever, was going to be this thing we came into, and we turned the corner and the dragon's actually eating the Yeti, and it was actually this big giant dragon. Like, that twist was really great. That was a really great game, and all of that dungeon set turned out amazing. So that deserves to be checked off on your 21 list.
That was definitely a fun one. And so something, that means another couple cards didn't get done, but that's okay. That kind of a cheat is going to be okay for me this year, because if I get excited about something, why shouldn't it, be a project that I finish?
So listeners, if this sounds like something that you are interested in, we would love to hear about it. Either comment where you are listening to this podcast, email us, message us, find us on social medias. We'll give you all the details at the very end of the episode, but definitely we would love to hear if you decide to join in on the 20 for 22, whether you use Trello board or not, but create a list of nerdy goals for you to achieve throughout the year. We'll also keep you all updated as we progress through them as well.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't post some screenshots of the mission accomplished tab on our Trello board for some of our nerdier things. That might be a fun way to get people excited about it.
Absolutely. Or just root us on as we try to achieve our 22 for 22.
Maybe that's what I'll post, things that are in the in progress column. And then once they get stuck there for a time, I'll put up a picture of it.
There you go. Social media pressure.
Yeah.
I put it online. It's got to happen now. But that leads us to, Rob, what is the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Ooh, well, the nerdiest thing I did this week was definitely an unintentional nerd time sink. So Christmas 2021 was the 20th anniversary of the Lord of the Rings, first Lord of the Rings movie, Fellowship of the Rings. And I had seen a couple posts on social media or whatever. And like I said, this was during the holiday break where I was painting like 20 hours a day. And so I'm always looking for stuff to kind of put on in the background, because when I'm modeling or when I'm painting, I'm using my hands and my eyes for that. Most of the time I'm listening to audio, right? I listen to a lot of podcasts, or even some like of the YouTube stuff that I listen to will be like actual play podcasts where like you don't really have to watch it because it's just people playing Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And I was like, oh, well, Fellowship of the Rings, I've seen that movie a bunch of times. I could put that on in the background and it'd be fine. So I did. And then I extended edition, of course. And then the next one, and then the next one, and then the Hobbit movie, and then the next one. I just binged through all of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies throughout this time as I was painting away on miniatures. Definitely probably could have gotten more miniatures away because, of course, I kept my neck kept craning back up to the TV screen to get lost in these, epic battles and cool scenes of these movies. But they're fantastic, and I unintentionally spent I don't even want to add it up, but it's got to be 30 hours of Lord of the Rings content during that week.
You mentioned in our one shot about Harry Potter, that is a unchecked box on your nerd card. I have never seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies. I've not read any of the books. I know very little about it except hobbits and rings, and it gets thrown into a thing at the end, and it is absolutely unchecked on my nerd card as well.
Add it to the podcast list.
Here we go. Oh, am I going to have to watch 30 hours? I do still owe you. So now you got to choose Lord of the Rings or Firefly.
Firefly, you could get done in a fifth of the time. Oh my gosh.
I might have to put one of those on. I might have to go back to my 2022 and update it.
God, and that's the funniest things too, because I had cards on my 21 for 21 list of read or listen to these new books, watch these new movies you didn't get to, watch these new Did I do any of that? No. I went to the thing that I've seen 5 times and spent 30 hours on that instead.
I hear you. I mean, I ran into that problem during winter break as well. I watched half of Black Widow and I fell asleep and then started watching something else that I had seen 100 times instead of finishing it. So no comment on the fall asleep. It was late and I was tired. So it wasn't it was boring. I was enjoying the film. For me, the nerdiest thing I did this week, I did a 50-50. I got my partner a Nintendo Switch for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I think I've played it more than she has. So that I haven't nerded out about video games in a long time. I've certainly enjoyed the Switch, but I think more nerdy than that is over break. I found myself in Vegas dropping off my stepdaughter to go spend Christmas with her family there. What does a person do when they're alone in Vegas for a night? I went to the movies and watched the new West Side Story because I'm a musical nerd. That is one of the things that is on my list. And West Side Story is one of my absolute favorites. Certainly my favorite adaptation to a movie. I am a huge fan of it. And the music, Leonard Bernstein, is just brilliant. The new version of it is amazing. I definitely didn't do the typical, hey, I'm in Vegas, I'm going to gamble and party. I did there's 3 other people in the theater, recliner seats, and watched West Side Story. And it was amazing. It was so good. That's the nerdiest thing I did last week.
And what's coming up for you?
So the nerdiest thing next week for me, over break, we did a lot of almost what would be considered spring cleaning. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get rid of stuff and really slim down on the amount of stuff we have. My partner finally brought everything from her storage container in Nevada, where she was from, and brought it all in. So we just exploded with stuff in the house. So we got some new furniture, and, a love-hate relationship with IKEA is putting stuff together. So now it's all together, and we've kind of rearranged furniture and gotten rid of stuff. And now is about the purge, right? Mm-hmm. So for this next week, it's going to be going through everything, getting rid of stuff, moving things around, reorganizing it, what I call our nerd spaces, reorganize where I do my nerd work, my little corner of our home where I have my bookshelf and everything. So it's just going to be a lot of moving stuff around and reorganizing. What about you? What's the nerdiest thing you're going to do next week?
Unfortunately, the nerdiest thing I'm going to be doing is this ongoing saga. And this might be the third or fourth time I have brought up my reorganization of the game room, which was a big project back in my 2021 Trello board. And it is still not done. I had this amazing experience, which I know is more and more common, of ordering furniture, like you're talking about, having a delivery date 6 to 8 weeks out, waiting. And then the day before it was supposed to be delivered, getting an email that says your order has been canceled.
Wait, not just delayed.
No.
Oh my gosh.
I still don't have the furniture and cabinets and things that I need to finish that project. The game room is still a mess. There are piles of boxes on the floor and it is super frustrating. So yeah, I'm sick of the piles of stuff clumped in the corner. I reordered more furniture. It's going to be another 6 to 8 weeks before it pretends to show up. So I need a temporary solution for that, which is going to go right along with a purge of mine. The more stuff I can get rid of, the less stuff I have to, have sitting around on the floor and stuff. I was really excited about starting the new year with this clean, bright, beautiful game room, and it is still a dirty garage.
Are you able to get the matching shelves to the ones you already got?
I'm trying again.
Wow.
I'm trying again, and we will see. Supply chain, am I right?
I mean, it's a thing right now. Hence, still don't have that Dark Tower game from 2018.
I'm actually, it's kind of in my head, there's a race of what is going to arrive sooner. Conan 2 Electric Boogaloo or Return of the Dark Tower.
Or your shelves. Your shelves might actually come before Return to Dark Tower.
Maybe. God, I would hope so. I would have a place to put the new board games that are coming in.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So yeah, the nerdiest thing I am going to be doing is going through a bunch of the boxes and trying to pick through stuff and organize stuff in a way that is a temporary solution for that problem.
Looks like the new year for us has brought new organization.
And I do love organizing, and I nerd out about organizing, right? Like whenever there's, a project, a lot of putting together my 2022 list was going through my Kickstarter page of things that I've backed that have been coming up and making a spreadsheet and organizing them by, the date received. So like what's been sitting around the longest that I have to get to, and kind of color coding things like that. And, like when we did the Buffy episode, like that was organizing what I was going to watch and color coding. And so like that was a fun part of it for me. So that is why I say, like, I don't want it to sound like, a big complaint. I have to organize my game. I love organizing.
Oh no, it feels really great, especially when you're done all the reorganization and cleaning during winter break. I took the shelf we have for our games, which is just a 2 little shelf thing that's built into the wall, and I reorganized it so we could get games out easier and play it. Like, it just makes me happy. So no complaints whatsoever. However, it is a pain when you don't have all the tools you need, such as cabinets that you waited 6 weeks for.
You have your vision and it's not coming true yet.
And then reality.
Yeah.
Our next episode, we will explore one of our favorites in the nerdverse, craft beer.
All right. I'm looking forward to that one. Make sure 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, get yourself a 6-pack of something new. Get ready to sit down.
This is going to be Rob's Buffy.
Oh, no. Do you have something to say about this episode? Join in the conversation by following us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all at Nerd Best Friends. Or send us a message by writing to podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. Please make sure to listen, subscribe, like, follow, share our podcast, and give us that 5-star rating. Thanks for listening.
All right, nerds. Thank you. Rob, best friend, good luck with your 20 for 22.
You too. Bring what did they come out on Tuesdays or Wednesdays?
We come out on Wednesdays.
All right.